My name's Chris, I'm 27, and I've always been the quiet kid in my family. Not shy exactly, just the one who doesn't cause waves. I've always been the guy who shows up when asked, does what's expected, and keeps the peace, even when it's uncomfortable. For most of my life, I convinced myself that was just how family worked. You bite your tongue, you go along, you laugh when you're supposed to. But this year, something changed. Maybe it was getting older, maybe it was finally starting to feel proud of the life I was building on my own, but I started noticing the way my family treated me in a way I hadn't before. Little comments, little jokes, the way my accomplishments were brushed off like they didn't matter. And it all came to a head on my birthday. The morning started with a text from my mom that just said, "Skip your plans. We're doing a family game night. 6 p.m. No, happy birthday. No, we'd love to celebrate with you." Just a directive, like I was expected to drop everything. It wasn't the first time they'd done something like this, making plans without asking if I was free, but it stung a little more because, well, it was my day. I stared at my phone for a long time before replying with a simple, "Okay." What I wanted to say was, I already had plans. I wanted to spend the evening with friends who actually make me feel like I matter. But I didn't. I showed up right at 6, like I always do. They were already gathered in the backyard, music playing, drinks in hand, everyone laughing. For a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd planned something nice for me after all. But as soon as I stepped onto the patio, my brother grinned, tossed me a pair of grill tongs, and said, "Make yourself useful, birthday boy." The whole table laughed. My mom clapped her hands like it was the funniest thing in the world. I wish I could say I stood up for myself right then, but old habits die hard. I smiled, made a light joke about being promoted to chef, and started cooking. I grilled for nearly 2 hours, burgers, hot dogs, chicken, while everyone else played board games, took group selfies, and posted them online. Occasionally, someone would yell from the table, "Don't burn mine," or "Chris, grab me another drink while you're up." Inside, I was boiling. I could feel my face getting hot, not just from the grill, but from humiliation. They hadn't even set aside a plate for me. When I finally sat down with my own burger, everyone was already halfway through dessert, laughing about a game I hadn't been invited to play. My mom looked at me and said, "You should smile more. You look so serious all the time." That's when something shifted in me. I didn't argue, didn't lash out. I just smiled. A small, quiet smile that no one really noticed, and finished my food. When it was over, I stayed behind to clean up. I scraped plates, packed leftovers, took out the trash. The whole time, I could hear them inside laughing, playing, having the time of their lives. And the whole time, I stayed quiet. When I was done, I grabbed my jacket, said a polite, "Thanks for dinner," and headed out. My mom barely looked up from her card game to wave goodbye. As I drove home, I felt oddly calm. Not sad exactly, not even angry. Just done. Done being the punchline. Done being the reliable background character in my own life. Because what they didn't know, what no one in that backyard knew, was that I'd been planning something for months. Something they would all find out about very soon. That night, as I sat in my apartment scrolling through the pictures they'd posted without me, I finally felt the first spark of satisfaction. I knew that when the time came, they wouldn't be laughing anymore. And when their phones all lit up at the same time, there'd be no going back. I woke up the next morning to my phone buzzing, not with happy birthday messages or belated well wishes, but with notifications from social media. My brother had posted a picture of himself holding the burger I cooked with the caption, "When your little brother's only talent is grilling." It already had a thread of laughing emojis from cousins, and a "LOL, he's so good at it though" comment from my aunt. I just sat there staring at it, my thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't like it. I didn't reply. I just locked my phone and set it face down on the table. The thing about moments like that is they stick with you. I carried that feeling through the whole week, like a splinter under my skin. Every time my phone buzzed with another notification, another photo, another little joke about me, I felt it drive deeper. It wasn't just the one night. It was every night they'd ever volunteered me to be the one cooking, cleaning, driving, setting up, watching the kids. Every time I'd been expected to help out because I was single and had the time. Every family event where my accomplishments were brushed aside in favor of whatever my brother or sister had done. On Wednesday, Mom texted again, "Game night Friday. Don't be late this time." No question mark. No, does that work for you? I had plans to go out with friends that night. But when I told her I might not make it, she replied with a single line that made my stomach twist. Family comes first, Chris. Don't make me explain that to everyone. That last part, don't make me explain that to everyone, felt less like a reminder and more like a warning. I could picture it already, her sighing dramatically at the table, telling everyone I was too busy for my family, painting me as the selfish one. So I canceled my plans and showed up again. This time it wasn't grilling. It was being sent to pick up food for everyone because apparently no one else felt like cooking. I walked in just in time to hear my brother joke. Perfect timing. Our delivery boy has arrived. Everyone laughed like it was the most natural thing in the world. I set the bags down on the counter, and before I could even sit, Mom said, Chris, can you grab plates for everyone? I wish I could say I told her no. I wish I could say I walked out right then. But instead, I did what I always did. I grabbed the plates, passed them around, and sat in the one empty chair in the corner. That night I noticed something different though. While they laughed and played, I didn't feel like part of the room. I felt like an observer, like I was outside looking in. I noticed how my brother always interrupted me when I tried to speak, how my sister rolled her eyes when I mentioned something about work, how Mom and Dad exchanged glances like they had a private joke whenever I talked about my apartment or my friends. And I noticed something else, how happy they all were, completely unaware that I was sitting there quietly taking mental notes. The next weekend was worse. Mom asked me to come by early to help set up. I thought maybe it would just be putting out chairs or setting the table. Instead, I was handed a list of groceries and told to run to the store. By the time I got back, everyone else was there, already drinking and talking. My bags were barely unpacked before someone shouted from the backyard, Chris, can you make the sangria? I remember standing there with my hands still full of groceries, staring at the back door. It wasn't even anger at that point. It was something heavier. Resignation, maybe. I put the groceries away, made the sangria, and brought it outside. My sister took a sip, smiled, and said, See? This is why we keep him around. They laughed. I smiled. But this time, my smile felt different. After everyone left that night, I stayed behind again to help Mom clean. I was standing at the sink, scrubbing a pan, when she said casually, You know, Chris, your brother and his wife are trying to save for a house. You should think about letting them rent your apartment for a while. You can move back in with us. It would help them a lot. I froze, my hands still in the soapy water. Move back in, I asked, keeping my voice as even as I could. It'd be temporary, she said quickly. Just until they get on their feet. You don't really need that much space anyway. I turned around slowly. I just signed a 2-year lease. Mom shrugged like that was a minor detail. Well, you can always break a lease. You'd be with family, and we'd all be together again. The idea of moving back into that house, the same house where I'd spent years being the errand boy, the peacekeeper, the afterthought, made my chest tighten. I'm not doing that, I said quietly. Mom looked offended, like I'd just turned down a reasonable request. It's just for a little while. Don't be so dramatic. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just finished washing the dishes, dried my hands, and left without saying much else. But when I got home, I sat on my couch for a long time staring at the wall. I thought about every time I'd bent over backward to make them happy. Every time I'd put my own life on hold to make theirs easier. And how it had never once been enough. That was the night I opened the folder on my computer labeled Project. It wasn't really a project in the traditional sense, not yet. But it was an idea I'd been quietly building, piece by piece, ever since I started realizing how my family treated me. Financial documents, screenshots, plans. It had started as a way to get my life in order. But as I sat there adding to it, I realized it had become something else entirely. Something that was going to change everything. And as much as part of me wanted to slam the laptop shut and forget about it, I didn't. Because for the first time, I didn't feel powerless. The following week was my sister's birthday. We all gathered at the house again. I handed her a gift card. Nothing extravagant, just something thoughtful. She opened it, smiled faintly, and said, Thanks. I mean, it's not as nice as what you got last year, but thanks. Mom shot me a look, like she agreed, but wasn't going to say it out loud. My brother grinned and said, You know, you should really go bigger for birthdays. Make people feel special. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I just nodded and said, You're right. People should feel special on their birthdays. That night, as I drove home, I felt that quiet smile creep back onto my face. Because they had no idea what was coming. And this time, I wasn't just planning on cooking. The turning point came sooner than I expected, and it was so casual, so matter-of-fact, that it almost didn't register at first. It was a Sunday afternoon, 2 weeks after my sister's birthday. Mom texted me early that morning. "Dinner tonight. Bring dessert." No question, no could you. Just the usual assumption that I'd comply. I picked up a cake from the bakery near my apartment, a nice one, because despite everything, I still wanted to be the person who shows up with something thoughtful. When I got to the house, everyone was already seated around the dining room table. My dad was at the head, swirling a glass of wine, talking loudly about some work thing. My brother and sister were laughing at a video on his phone. Mom was setting out plates. "Perfect, you're here," she said as soon as I stepped inside. "We've been waiting to tell you something." That should have been my first clue, the way she said it, like I'd been summoned. I set the cake down on the counter and walked into the dining room. "What's up?" I asked. Dad leaned back in his chair, smiling like he was proud of himself. "We've decided your sister and her husband are going to move into your apartment next month, just until they save for a down payment." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" Mom jumped in quickly, her tone calm, like she was explaining something perfectly reasonable. "It's just until they get on their feet. They need the space more than you do, Chris. You can stay here in your old room. It'll be fun, like old times." I stood there for a second, feeling every muscle in my body tense. "You can't just decide that," I said slowly. My brother snorted. "Relax, man. It's not a big deal. You don't even use half the space in that apartment. Besides, you'll save money living here." I looked at him, then at my parents, trying to figure out if this was some kind of joke. Their faces told me it wasn't. "I just signed a lease," I reminded them. Dad waved a hand like that was a minor inconvenience. "Break it. Pay the fee. It's worth it to help family. You can't put a price on that." Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but like a quiet thread breaking. "You didn't even ask me," I said. Mom's expression hardened just slightly, the way it always did when she thought I was being difficult. "Chris, don't make this harder than it needs to be. We've already told them they can move in. They're counting on you." "You already told them?" My voice was sharper than I meant it to be. "They were so excited when we told them," Mom said. "Don't ruin this for them." I felt the room tilt a little, like I was the unreasonable one here. "So you decided what to do with my apartment, promised it to someone else, and now you're telling me I have to go along with it? Because you already said yes?" Dad sighed, as if I was embarrassing him. "You always make things so complicated. This is a chance to do something good for your family. Don't be selfish." Selfish. That word hit harder than anything else. After everything, all the times I'd cooked, cleaned, driven, canceled plans, picked up slack, I was selfish for not wanting to be kicked out of my own place. I didn't yell. I didn't storm out. I just stood there, nodding slowly, the way you do when you finally see something clearly for the first time. "Fine," I said quietly. Mom's face softened, relieved. "Good. I knew you'd come around." But in that moment, I wasn't agreeing. I was making a decision, just not the one they thought. I stayed for dinner, though I barely tasted the food. I sat there while they laughed and talked about where my sister would put her furniture in my apartment, how convenient it would be for her commute, how much money she and her husband would save. My brother joked about Chris finally being useful for something. Mom chuckled and told him not to tease. Dad raised his glass and said, "Here's to families sticking together." I raised mine too, smiling faintly. But my thoughts were miles away. When dinner was over, I helped clean up, quietly, methodically, the way I always did. But this time, I wasn't just being helpful. I was giving myself time to think, time to breathe. When I finally got in my car, I didn't go home right away. I drove around aimlessly, letting the streetlights blur past, my mind racing. I thought about every time they'd expected me to put them first, every time they'd laughed when I tried to set boundaries, every time they'd acted like my life was less important than theirs. And I thought about that folder on my laptop, the one labeled Project. When I got home, I opened it. I stayed up until nearly 3 in the morning, adding to it, refining it, turning it from a vague idea into something solid. I made lists. I made calls. I drafted emails. And with every step, I felt lighter. The next morning, Mom texted me, "Thank you for being reasonable last night. We knew you'd do the right thing." I stared at the message for a long time before replying with just one word, "Sure." But inside, I was smiling. because they still had no idea. And by the time they did, it would be far too late to undo it. After that Sunday dinner, something in me changed, but the world around me didn't, at least not right away. My family kept moving along like nothing had happened, like they hadn't just told me they'd already promised away the place I worked so hard to afford. I started going through the motions, but I wasn't really there. When Mom texted about family dinners, I still showed up. When Dad needed help fixing something around the house, I still came by, but I stopped talking much. Stopped volunteering information about my life. Stopped trying to earn their approval in ways I never should have had to. And yet, even with me quiet, they still found ways to remind me of where they thought I stood. A week later, Mom called me at work in the middle of the day. I never get calls from her unless it's something urgent, so I stepped outside to answer. "Hey, what's up?" "Oh, good. You answered," she said briskly. "Listen, your sister and her husband want to start moving some things into your place next weekend. They found a couple of days off work, so it just makes sense to get it done now." I stood there on the sidewalk, heart pounding. "You mean the place I still live in?" "Yes, but it's just a few boxes," Mom said, like she was explaining something to a child. "You can stack them in a corner until you move your stuff out. It's not a big deal." "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "I haven't agreed to this. I haven't even figured out where I'd go. You can't just move them into my apartment while I'm still there." "You're being dramatic," she said sharply. "You've had plenty of time to figure this out. You knew this was coming." I had to lean against the wall just to steady myself. "No, Mom, I didn't. You decided this without me." "Chris," she said, her voice suddenly softer, like she was tired of the conversation. "Sometimes you just have to do things for family whether you like it or not. They need this more than you do. You're single, you have no kids, you'll be fine. It's time to grow up and think about someone besides yourself." That last line hit me in a way I didn't expect. Grow up? I'd been supporting myself since I was 21. I'd never asked them for rent money, never moved back in after college, never asked them to bail me out of a bad decision. And here I was being told that because I didn't have a spouse or children, my home was a fair bargaining chip for someone else's future. When the call ended, I just stood there staring at my phone until my lunch break was over. I walked back into the office feeling like someone had taken all the air out of me. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept picturing strangers, even if they were technically my sister and brother-in-law, putting their things in my apartment, in my space, like I was a guest in my own life. I thought about them laughing together, decorating, rearranging my furniture. I thought about coming home from work to find my things moved without my permission. It wasn't just about the apartment anymore. It was about the principle. The way my family always decided things for me and expected me to nod and smile. Over the next few days, the pressure got worse. My sister texted me, "Can we bring over a few things Friday night? It'll be quick." My brother sent me a laughing emoji followed by, "Don't forget to clean the place before they move in. You don't want to be a bad landlord." Even Dad got in on it. "Proud of you for stepping up for your family, son. This is what being a man is about." Each message made me feel smaller, like my own life was slipping out from under me. I stopped going out with friends because I didn't want to explain what was happening. I stopped answering calls after a while, even from friends who noticed I was pulling back, because I didn't have the energy to pretend everything was fine. When Friday came, I went straight home after work, shut off my phone, and sat in silence for a long time. My apartment suddenly felt like it was already gone, like I was sitting in someone else's living room. I didn't open the door when my sister knocked that night. I didn't answer when she called. Later, I saw the text she sent Mom in the family group chat. "Chris is being impossible. He wouldn't even let us in." Mom replied, "We'll talk to him. He's just having a hard time letting go." Letting go, like my entire home, my safe space, was some childhood toy I needed to grow out of. That weekend, I started quietly packing. Not because I was moving out, but because I wanted to know exactly what was mine. I wanted to be ready if I had to fight to keep it. I boxed up my documents, my valuables, my photos. I moved important files to encrypted drives. I changed the passwords to my accounts and set up new security locks on my doors. Every step felt like reclaiming a little piece of control. By Sunday, I had a plan. It wasn't complete, not yet, but it was coming together. The folder on my laptop, the one that had started as just project, was now full of drafts and plans and receipts. I spent hours combing through everything, making sure every step was airtight. When Mom called that night to remind me about dinner, I said I wasn't feeling well and stayed home. It was the first time in months I'd missed a family gathering, and it felt good. Quiet. Peaceful. The next morning, I woke up to a string of passive-aggressive texts. Mom, hope you're feeling better. We missed you. Sister. Everyone asked where you were. We told them you just needed some space. Guess that's true. Brother, don't forget next weekend is moving day. I stared at that last message until my hands were shaking. Moving day, like it was already a done deal. Like I was just a footnote in their plan. I didn't reply. Instead, I closed my phone, turned back to my laptop, and started typing faster than I had in weeks. Whatever part of me had been holding back before was gone. I wasn't just planning to keep my apartment anymore. I was planning to make sure they understood, once and for all, that I wasn't the family doormat anymore. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt calm. The following week felt different, almost like stepping into a new version of my own life. It was subtle at first, a little more energy when I woke up in the morning, a little more calm as I drank my coffee, but the change was there. Something about deciding to take back control had unlocked a part of me I didn't even know I had. For the first time in months, I stopped feeling like I was reacting to everything my family threw at me and started feeling like I was the one setting the tempo. At work, I noticed the difference too. I'd been phoning it in a bit lately, my mind too distracted with family drama to focus. But that Monday, I walked into the office ready. I knocked out my projects faster than I had in weeks, took initiative on a new client proposal, and even impressed my boss so much he invited me to sit in on a leadership meeting later in the week. It was such a small thing, just being in that room, but it reminded me that outside my family's world, people saw me as capable, as someone worth listening to. That night, I sat in my apartment, and opened up the project folder again. I went through everything line by line, tightening up the plan. I updated financial documents, filed some paperwork I'd been procrastinating on, and even made an appointment with a lawyer I'd been meaning to consult for months about some personal legal matters. Each step felt like stacking bricks, building a wall between me and the chaos my family kept trying to drag me into. Midweek, my sister texted again. We're coming by Saturday to drop off the first load of boxes. Don't flake this time. I stared at the message for a long moment, then put my phone down and smiled to myself. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my landlord. We'd always had a good relationship, and I explained the situation without too many details, just that I needed to make sure my lease and property rights were absolutely secure, and that no one could move anything into my apartment without my permission. He was understanding and even offered to update the security code on the building and transfer me. By the time I hung up, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. That Friday, I stopped by the bank after work and reorganized my accounts, setting up new ones, consolidating savings, and moving some things around so I'd have easier access if I needed to act quickly. The banker who helped me smiled and said, "You're putting yourself in a strong position here." Exactly. That was the goal. I started taking better care of myself, too. I hit the gym again for the first time in months. Nothing crazy, just a simple routine, but it felt good to put my energy into something physical. I cooked a decent meal for myself instead of just grabbing takeout. I even went out with a couple of friends I hadn't seen in a while, and when they asked how things were going, I didn't unload the whole family drama. I just said, busy, but good, and realized I actually meant it. By Saturday morning, I was ready. I woke up early, tidied my apartment, and made sure everything important was locked away and accounted for. Then I turned my phone on and saw the inevitable text. "Sister, we're on our way." I didn't reply. Instead, I left for the day. I went to a coffee shop, brought my laptop, and worked on my plan with a clear head. Hours passed. I half expected a barrage of missed calls, but my phone stayed quiet until late afternoon when I saw a string of messages pop up one after another. "Mom, your sister said you weren't home. Where were you?" "Brother, nice of you to disappear on moving day. Real mature." "Sister, we had to take everything back to storage because of you. Do you have any idea how inconvenient that was?" I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I stayed at the coffee shop until closing time, then took a long, slow walk back to my apartment, breathing in the cool night air. For the first time in months, my home felt like mine again. That night, I sat on the couch with my laptop and finished the last major piece of the plan. I double-checked every step, every contingency. By the time I closed the lid, I felt something I hadn't felt since before my birthday. peace. And then, just to savor the moment, I poured myself a drink, sat back, and imagined the look on my family's faces when they realized what I'd been doing this whole time. Because they still thought they were in control. They thought I was just sulking, dragging my feet, waiting to give in. But what I was really doing was getting ready. And soon, very soon, they were going to find out exactly what that meant. By the time the next week rolled around, I was no longer just reacting to my family's plans. I was quietly steering my own course. The calm I'd been feeling had turned into something sharper, more deliberate. It was like standing at the top of a hill with a snowball in my hands, knowing that once I let go, it was going to roll downhill, gathering speed and power until it became unstoppable. On Monday, I met with the lawyer I'd scheduled the week before. I'd been a little nervous going in, unsure how much of my situation to share without sounding petty, but she listened carefully, asked good questions, and walked me through exactly what my rights were as a tenant. When I explained that my parents had decided to move my sister into my apartment, she raised an eyebrow and said, "They can't do that, and you don't have to let them." That alone was validating, but we didn't stop there. She helped me draw up a formal notice stating that I was the sole leaseholder and that no one was authorized to enter or store belongings in the apartment without my permission. She also recommended I update my renter's insurance and, just to be safe, install a camera inside near the front door. I left her office with a folder full of documents and a plan that was no longer just theoretical. It was real, on paper, and enforceable. The next step was taking care of the practical side. I had the building manager change the access code and issue me a new set of keys, mine and mine alone. He was curious why I wanted to update security when I'd only been living there for a year, but I just smiled and said, "Personal reasons." Then, late that night, I did something I hadn't done in a while. I went back through all the screenshots, group chat logs, and messages I'd been quietly saving over the last few months. Every little comment, every passive-aggressive text, every time they'd treated my boundaries like a punchline, I organized them into a neat timeline. I wasn't doing it to hurt them for the sake of hurting them. I was doing it because, for once, I wanted the full picture of how we got here. I wanted to see the pattern in black and white and make sure I wasn't crazy for feeling the way I did. Seeing it all laid out was sobering. It wasn't just a few bad days or misunderstandings. This was a consistent pattern of control and dismissiveness that went back years. And it confirmed for me that what I was doing wasn't an overreaction. It was the first real step I'd taken to protect myself. On Wednesday, Mom called again. I almost didn't answer, but some part of me wanted to hear what she'd say next. "Chris," she said brightly, "we're thinking of coming by this weekend with your dad to help you pack. That way, you don't have to do it alone." It took everything in me not to laugh. "I'm not packing," I said calmly. There was a pause, just long enough for me to picture her frown on the other end. "Chris," she said slowly, "we've already told your sister she can move in by the end of the month." "I haven't agreed to that," I said. "Well, you don't really get to just," she started, but I cut her off. "Yes, I do," I said, my voice sharper now. "It's my apartment. My name is on the lease. And no one is moving in unless I say so." There was silence on the other end for a moment, and then she said in that measured tone I'd heard my whole life when she wanted to guilt me into compliance, "You're making this very hard on everyone." "I think I've made things very easy for everyone for a very long time," I replied. "This time, I'm doing what's right for me." I hung up before she could answer. That night, I sat on my couch and felt something I hadn't felt in years, a sense of control over my own life. It was intoxicating. The next day, I took things a step further. I called a friend who worked in media, someone I'd helped out a few times over the years, and asked for a favor. I didn't give her all the details, just enough for her to understand that I was putting together something personal and wanted to make sure it reached the right people when the time came. She agreed to help without hesitation. By the end of the week, everything was lined up. Security tightened, legal protections in place, a plan for communication if things escalated, and a little extra surprise in the form of a digital backup that would make sure my side of the story was heard, even if my family tried to spin it. On Saturday, I stayed home. I wanted to see what they would do when they realized they couldn't just walk in anymore. Sure enough, around noon, I got the first text from my sister. "Hey, we're outside. Can you buzz us in?" I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, "Chris, come on, open the door. We just have a few things." Then another, "You're being ridiculous." Finally, after 20 minutes of silence, a text from Mom. "We're very disappointed in you. We'll talk about this later." I sat back on my couch, phone in hand, and let out a long breath. For the first time since this whole mess started, I wasn't the one scrambling to explain myself. They were. And they had no idea that I wasn't just holding my ground. I was setting the stage. Because what was coming next wasn't just about keeping my apartment. It was about showing them that I was no longer someone they could control, manipulate, or guilt into submission. And when the moment came, I was going to make sure they understood that message loud and clear, in a way they would never forget. Saturday night felt strangely quiet, almost too quiet, like the calm before a storm. I sat on my couch with the lights low, laptop open, double-checking everything one more time. Every file, every screenshot, every document I'd organized over the last few weeks was neatly arranged in a folder with a single name: family. The folder wasn't just a collection of receipts, it was the narrative, the story they'd written for me over the years without even realizing it. Every message, every comment, every casual dismissal of my boundaries was right there, time-stamped and clear. And now I was about to let them see it all at once. The first step was simple but symbolic. I drafted a message for the family group chat, short and polite. "Hey everyone, just a reminder, I'm not moving out. Please stop planning to use my apartment. I've taken steps to secure the lease and the property. Nothing you bring here will be accepted or stored. I appreciate you respecting my space going forward." It was the calmest I'd ever been in a text to them. No anger, no explanations, just a statement of fact. I hit send and set the phone down. The replies started rolling in almost immediately. "Mom, Chris, this is not the place to have this conversation. Call me. Sister, you can't just do this. We already gave notice on our current place. Brother, wow. Just wow. After everything we've done for you." I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I opened my email and queued up the second step, the timeline I'd assembled, all those texts and screenshots, turned into a single PDF file with a cover page that read, "For the record, this is how we got here." I sent it to each of them individually, not through the group chat. If they wanted to ignore it, they'd have to do so knowing I'd put the truth right in front of them. Within minutes, my phone started ringing. Mom first, then Dad, then my sister. I let every call go to voicemail, because the third step was already in motion. Earlier that day, I'd set up a private cloud folder with all the same files and scheduled an automatic message to go out to my extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, at midnight. It wasn't vindictive. I didn't add commentary or insults. I just sent them the same folder with a single line. If anyone is wondering why things are tense right now, here's the full story. It wasn't about turning them against my parents or siblings. It was about shining a light where they'd always counted on shadows. And then came the final piece of that night, the one I'd been saving since before my birthday. For months, I'd been working on a side project, a little passion business that I'd kept quiet while I got it off the ground. I'd launched it quietly online, grown it steadily, and last week it had finally taken off. I'd signed my first big client. The payment had hit my account that morning, more than enough to cover my lease for the next year, and then some. I took a picture of the signed contract, blurred out the sensitive info, and posted it in the group chat with one line: "Don't worry about me. I'm doing just fine." Then I put my phone face down on the table and went to bed. When I woke up the next morning, my notifications were chaos. Missed calls, frantic messages, even a couple of half-hearted apologies from extended family members who had clearly stayed up late reading through the folder. Mom's messages shifted from scolding to pleading. "We just wanted to help your sister. You're taking this too far." My sister's messages were angrier. "You made us look horrible. How could you do this to us?" Even Dad, usually the loudest one in the room, just wrote, "I think we need to talk. Face to face." But here's the thing. For the first time, I wasn't panicking about how to respond. I wasn't rushing to smooth things over or explain myself. I just sat there at my kitchen table, drinking my coffee slowly, reading each message in turn, and smiling. Because they weren't dictating the narrative anymore. I was. And as much as they wanted to drag me back into the old pattern, the guilt trips, the family pressure, I'd already taken it further than they could undo. The information was out there. The lines were drawn. And we hadn't even had the face-to-face confrontation yet. That was coming, and I was ready for it. The fallout came fast. By Monday, my phone had blown up so many times I stopped silencing it, and just left it face down on the table, screen lighting up every few minutes. There were group chat messages, separate messages from mom and dad, even a couple from cousins who had never once texted me directly in my life. Wow, I had no idea they treated you like that. Honestly, Chris, good for you. Your mom is furious, but she's quiet today. That's new. The shift in tone was palpable. For once, the whispers and judgment weren't about me being the difficult one. They were about my parents, my brother, my sister. By Wednesday, I finally agreed to see them. Dad insisted on a family meeting at the house. Part of me didn't want to go, didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me show up at their table again. But something in me needed to finish this. I needed them to see I wasn't just hiding behind texts or emails. When I walked in that night, the atmosphere was tense. Everyone was seated around the table, faces tight. Mom looked like she hadn't slept. My sister's arms were crossed, jaw set. My brother wouldn't even look at me. Dad cleared his throat first. "Chris," he said, his voice serious, "this has gotten out of hand." I sat down slowly, calm, and folded my hands on the table. "No, Dad. This is the first time it's in hand." Mom jumped in immediately. "We didn't deserve to be humiliated like that. You sent that folder to everyone. People are calling us, asking questions. They're asking questions because they finally saw the truth," I said evenly. "You made us look like villains," Mom shot back. "You didn't need my help with that," I said, my voice low but steady. There was a long silence. My sister finally spoke. "You could have just told us you didn't want to give up your apartment. You didn't have to make it a whole production." I turned to her. "I told you. I told all of you multiple times. You didn't listen. You laughed. You decided for me. You treated me like I was just a placeholder in my own life. And you expected me to smile and thank you for it." My brother finally looked up then, frowning. "You didn't have to drag the whole family into it." "I did," I said simply, "because you've spent years telling them your version of me. The unreliable one, the selfish one, the one who needs to grow up. I wanted them to see what's actually been happening." No one spoke for a long moment. I could feel the weight of the room pressing down on us, like they were realizing this wasn't going to be one of those conversations where I apologized just to smooth things over. Dad exhaled sharply through his nose. "So what now? You just cut us off." I shook my head slowly. "No, I'm not cutting anyone off. But I am done being treated like a backup plan. I'm done being volunteered for things I didn't agree to. And I am definitely done having my life decided for me." Mom looked at me, her voice quieter now. "We just wanted to help your sister. And I don't begrudge you for that," I said. "But helping her doesn't mean sacrificing me. It doesn't mean erasing me. If she needs a place, she can find her own. Like I did." My sister's glare softened just slightly, but she didn't speak. I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. Inside was a printed copy of the updated lease agreement, the legal notice, and the confirmation from my landlord that the apartment was secured under my name alone. "This," I said, tapping the envelope, "is final. No one is moving into my apartment. If anyone tries to enter without permission, I will pursue it legally. That's not a threat. It's just the boundary." Mom swallowed hard, and for a moment, she looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. "You've changed," she said quietly. "No," I said, standing up slowly. "I finally stopped letting you write my story for me." I didn't yell. I didn't slam the door. I just picked up my jacket, walked to the front door, and paused with my hand on the handle. "You always told me family comes first," I said over my shoulder. "Starting now, that includes me too." Then I left. When I got home, my phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't another angry message. It was from one of my cousins, the one who had always been just a little distant at family events. "Hey, saw everything you sent. Honestly, I'm proud of you. Took guts to stand up like that. Next time we do a game night, you should host, somewhere you actually get to sit down and play." I laughed out loud, the tension finally breaking. For the first time in months, my apartment didn't feel like a battleground. It felt like home again. And as I sat there on my couch, sipping a drink and letting the silence settle around me, I realized something. I hadn't just defended my apartment. I defended myself. And there was no going back.